Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Suzi Barrett, and my guest today is none other than Connor Ratliff. This is a very special live episode recorded at the Big Pond Improv Festival in Burlington, Vermont. A huge shout out and thank you to Nathan and Natalie for producing that festival and for all the great work you're doing out there at Vermont Comedy Club. You know Connor from Comedy Bang Bang and the show Ghosts, and from his award-winning podcast, Dead Eyes, which, if you haven't binged the whole thing yet, I highly recommend it. It's honestly one of my favorite podcasts. In the improv world, Connor came up through UCB New York and is a member of the legendary house team, the Stepfathers, and you can also catch him playing in Rat Scraps in New York. This episode is absolutely packed with wisdom nuggets and practical improv insights. And in part 2, we close with a live Q&A from the audience, and Connor shares some great tactics for what to do when you find yourself in a scene you don't like and you want to save it. Part 2, of course, is available to subscribers only, but you can become a subscriber by going to yesalso.supercast.com. And if you want more Connor, make sure you check out his Linktree, which is linked in the show notes here, or you can find through his Instagram. Also, if you are in Chicago on November 22nd, do not miss Connor's one-man improvised show called The Acting Class. He'll be doing that at the Greenhouse Theater, and you can get tickets at greenhousetheater.org. And now, let's go to the Big Pond Improv Festival and Connor Ratliff. Hello.
Hello.
And you can leave yours on or you can take it up. Yeah, there we go.
I think I'm going to mirror what you're doing.
Yeah.
Peas in a pod.
Okay. And then I'm going to mirror what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you put it back on the stand, I'll probably do the same thing.
All right. Your move, buddy.
Yeah. This feels comfortable, though.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
I feel like we've landed on just a very natural.
I mean, after a while, I can imagine going back to this. I can very much imagine being more like.
Okay, we need a little clock so we know who's leading and who's following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to think too much about it because I'm worried that's what the only thing we'll talk about or think about.
There goes an hour.
Yeah.
I want to talk about. You talk about in Dead Eyes, your podcast. You talk about being a child actor as you were growing up.
Yes.
You even reference being in commercials as a kid.
I was in some local TV spots in Missouri.
Congrats. That's so much more successful than most of us have ever been.
Well, I did make a few $100s, which at the time, when you're a kid and you get a check that's just yours and you know it's for work that you did, it's pretty overwhelming.
Also, in inflation money, a couple $100 back then is way more than now. And also, when you're a kid, even $1 is a lot. You just don't have money.
If there was someone now who was taking care of paying for and preparing all my food and paying for my housing, and then I got any extra amount of money, it would be a lot.
Yeah.
When you're a kid and everything you have is being paid for, and then you get extra money.
Dude.
That's the dream, is that kind of money at any age.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you always wanted to be an actor?
No, I wanted to be a cartoonist or an animator for a long time, and I ended up becoming an actor at a certain point, and it felt like it would be easier for me.
You dick. What?
No. I didn't think that I was ever going to be able to draw as well as I wanted to, and I could feel this disconnect. I was pretty good at drawing cartoons, but there were so many things that I just couldn't draw, and I had this vision of what it would be like if I achieved my dream and became a nationally syndicated cartoonist, and then 5 years later I decided I didn't want to do it, I'd have to keep doing it. And I had this thought of what it would feel like if my hands hurt and I didn't feel like drawing and I had to draw and I had to think of something funny. And it immediately was and I think that's what would have happened maybe is I would have become, because it's what happened to me in acting was all the things that I thought would be fun about acting eventually I realized, that's not what being a professional actor is.
Yeah. I just picture parent-teacher conferences. Your teacher's Mr. Ratliff, do you know what the word existential crisis means? Your kid was just supposed to say what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he wrote this essay about what if his hands hurt and what if he gets fit.
I just, and it is the things that when you try to plan your career based on what you like doing, then eventually that butts up against like, well, we don't just pay you to do what you like.
Right.
As a professional actor, you're just constantly doing things that are like, you got to wake up at 3 a.m. for a 5 o'clock van that takes you to a place for a 7 o'clock call
to go get humiliated.
And you're doing something. I had a very good job that I was very happy to book a few months ago. That the whole day I was unhappy and I was physically in pain, and it was one of those things where nobody knew my name. You're probably going to see this at some point. It's one of these. It's a TV commercial. I don't even know what I'm allowed to say or not say.
Please say it. We'll just take it out after we get sued. I don't know.
I'm just going to say it's the type of commercial where I am playing a character that the point of the commercial is like, do you want this or do you want this? And I'm this. Like I'm paired with like an athletic, famous, well-loved celebrity,
right.
And then I'm playing like a notorious historical figure who is made to be a pathetic figure in the commercial.
Yeah. It's like when actors get hired to play the before pick for like a clinic.
Very much the before.
Yeah, right.
And it's also like I'm outside filming in the summer heat in the Midwest, and I'm dressed up in like heavy, like King Robert Baratheon type, heavy king's garbs, and nobody knows my name. And all day people just kept calling me Your Majesty, and they were all saying it in a good-hearted way, but it feels like shit when you're just like miserable and your feet hurt.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, hello, Your Highness. And I'm like, hi.
Yeah. Right. And knowing the whole time that you're this.
Yeah. That the whole point of you is like, I played that part a lot, which is just like, I once did it was like a Time Warner cable ad where the whole point was that there's like a husband and a wife, and the wife's looking out the window like an attractive man. And my whole reason to be there is so that the person can be like, oh, God, she's like married to him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's, to quote Don Draper, that's what the money is for.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's what they're paying you for. It's just like, fuck you. Like, we're paying you for you're going to make rent off of this month.
The amount of breakdowns that I get that like for commercials and stuff, which like it shouldn't matter. Like for a commercial, it should just be like looking for a woman this age range or whatever.
Yeah.
The amount of breakdowns I get that are like, no one too attractive, please.
Yeah.
She should look like a woman that you wouldn't want to have sex with. Like,
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the number of times that if you book such a thing and then you get to a point where you realize very much this could have been withheld information.
Yes.
Like if they cast you as a dentist and then you film a dentist scene and then you realize, oh, they never needed to say the most unattractive dentists in the world. And you're like, that's not even a story point that the audience ever needs to know.
Right.
They get it because they've cast you, and the audience will it's like a secret that can go from behind the scenes casting to the viewer at home being like, yeah, I wouldn't marry that dentist.
And boy, I do want to buy some Cheetos now, huh?
Yeah.
That worked, yeah.
It is the type of thing that the actor doesn't need to know, but I do feel like there is some level of the industry at which there has been a decision made that's like, we're going to tell them always.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't give a shit.
Yeah,
and it's like survival of the fittest. Like if they want it bad enough, they'll break through the pain.
But as a kid,
I
started doing plays, and my dad had started out trying to be an actor, and my mom did community theater. And my dad's job when I was a kid was he was a local weatherman and live TV kids talk show host.
Amazing.
It was like, not talk show. He had a studio audience of kids, and they would show like Bugs Bunny cartoons and Popeye cartoons, and he had puppets that he interacted with.
So your dad was the coolest person in your town.
Yeah.
He's like a
everybody knew him.
Yeah. How fun.
Even he did that for like 10 years, and like 25 years after that, people would still be like, hey, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? As if he had been on the air that week,
Right. So you chose acting as like as a replacement for cartooning because you didn't want your love of cartooning to like be like weathered away by the harshness.
I realized a couple things. I realized when I wanted to work in animation, I didn't really want to be an animator. I wanted to make cartoons.
Yeah.
And that's different than like being the person in the room who's like flipping the thing. Back then it was on paper. Now I assume it'd just be someone clicking and scanning. And I'm like, that's drudgery. I'm not a good enough draftsman to be that person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know how to become a person who makes cartoons. If I'd been born 20 years later, the technology would have been there for me to make cartoons very easily using the kind of technology you have now. You know, it would have been, but it was easy to do plays, and it was easy to like make little movies with my friends and stuff like that. And that was fun. And I thought, oh, there's a path towards being an actor that is this thing that I do. And eventually I arrived at the same place in acting that I feared I would arrive at with.
That's what that's what I wanted to get to.
Which Dead Eyes is sort of partly about that, which is just when you reach that point where you're like, oh, this is not for you. This industry doesn't exist so that I can enjoy being an actor.
Right.
It's not here to serve me. If I'm lucky, I will play a role in serving other people's things, get to make some things I like, get to make some things that I will pay the bills.
But I am the blood that feeds the vampire.
And improv is the thing that, when I quit professional acting for about a decade, UCB was the thing that actually got me back to a place where I make some money doing improv, but I mostly make my living doing like film and TV stuff. But improv has been the thing that it's like acting and professional acting is sort of ruined in a way. Uh-huh. And improv is not, because improv is where I still have joy.
Amazing. Let's get a hand for that. You took a 10-year break from acting.
Yeah.
Because of like disillusionment and being
Nothing was going my way.
Yeah.
In addition to, I won't retell the Tom Hanks Dead Eye story. We can just footnote it there. That if you're like, what is that?
Give the log line.
Oh, I was cast in a very small speaking role in the 2001 HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. The day before I was supposed to film, Tom Hanks was directing the episode I was in. I got a message from my agent saying, you have to come in and re-audition in person for Tom Hanks. He has looked at your audition tape that we have cast you off of, and he's having second thoughts. He thinks you have dead eyes. And so I re-auditioned for Tom Hanks. I was immediately fired. And then I did this podcast 20 years later that was about like, hey, what went on with that? And I investigated it.
You must listen.
But nothing was going my way. Like I moved to New York shortly after that, and I couldn't get anyone to do anything. Like I just couldn't get auditions.
Yeah.
I just wasn't going anywhere. So I just stopped.
And full stop. Like improv didn't enter until the end of those
2009,
10 years.
I started taking improv classes.
Why did you start improv, and how did you discover it?
I had seen some shows at UCB, and I liked the vibe there because the shows were cheap. They were either $5 or $10 or free.
Yeah.
And that I worked at the Barnes & Noble in Union Square. $5 and $10 and free were the things I could afford in New York City once I had paid my rent. And I went to see some shows, and I inquired. I knew someone who was putting on a show there. I'm like, this place seems like, how do people get to perform here? And they're like, oh, well, you take these classes. And I was like, never mind.
Yeah.
I was like, I already went to drama school. The last thing I need is more classes. I never liked acting classes. I never felt like I got better as an actor as a result of acting classes. And I have a degree from drama school in England, and I never liked it. And so I didn't want to take classes. And my parents kept kind of encouraging me. They kept saying, well, you know, Amy Poehler has a school that teaches improv classes. Why don't you take improv classes? And
the fact that you have parents who know... I mean, you are so
it definitely,
lucky.
Once I started doing improv, I realized that was not the normal experience. I feel like now most parents probably know what improv is, but in 2009, people were like, all the performers were like, my parents don't understand what I'm doing here.
And in 2009, half of parents still didn't know who Amy Poehler was, despite Parks and Rec's success and SNL. But to put this in perspective, I was teaching at UCB for 6 years when I found out that my parents thought that I was a professor at University of California, Berkeley. Which is like a 6.5-hour drive away from LA. And they had been telling people that I taught at Cal Berkeley. I was like, why? What?
6 years is a long time.
That's a long time.
To know the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's a full presidential administration and a half.
And a half, yeah. Yeah.
Well, to give the background, and this is something I didn't talk about when I was taking classes or when I was, I didn't tell people about it at any point because I thought it was weird. It would have been a weird thing to say to people. But my dad did improv in Chicago in 1971
Hell yeah.
in a group called the Chicago Extension, which basically he was trying to be an actor. He was selling insurance as his like day job, and he saw a posting for like auditions for an improv group. And it was Del Close running the group.
No shit.
So it was one of the times when he was like on the outs with Second City because I think he was like back and forth. He worked for them. He didn't work for them. He'd quit. He'd be fired, etc. And during one of those years, for a year, basically every week, Del Close was coaching my dad and like 7 other. It was basically, I think he was at that time figuring out what the Herald was.
Uh-huh.
And like Betty Thomas, who was on the show Hill Street Blues and directed like the Brady Bunch movie and a bunch of other big things, like she was on the team with him. I have a poster in my apartment that shows all of the. It's like the Hard Day's Night album cover, but it's the people who were in so it's my dad's on there like 3 times
So this is like the era of like they're doing like 8.5-hour heralds, and Del's like waking up in the back like, yeah, I think that's something. Like, is it that era?
I asked my dad like, what do you remember? And he's like, not very much from that time, which is also like that improv brain thing of like backstage, I was like, we've never met. And like, you were saying we have met because we were on stage at a Chris Gethard show at UCBLA where there were like 40 other people also on stage. Like, that doesn't count as meeting because stuff that happens like, I'll remember this because this is a one-to-one human conversation.
It's okay if you don't.
But if there were 50 other people and we were all in character or doing whatever Chris Gethard was like asking us to do, all those memories go into a file that gets written over the second you need to remember anything else. Yeah,
we have like one folder for improv show on our desktop, and it gets replaced like every week, and you're like, I don't know what shows I did last week.
You can open parts of the files, but you can't open them. Other people, if they come up to you and they're like, I saw a show where you played an armadillo.
That's right.
And you'll be like, I remember part of it, but you can't open that file. Someone else who remembers can open the file.
How absurd. Like, everyone else is a librarian with keys to your brain.
Yes. If anyone who don't have access. An improv show, other people now have the security pass to some of your memory.
Right. I've had that experience where people have come up to me and been like, I think I saw you at UCB. Did you do a scene where you were like in a hot air balloon and you guys were shooting at the Easter Bunny? I'm like, probably. I don't know. Like, sounds great.
So my dad doesn't remember a lot of specifics about the improv that they were doing, but when he came to see stuff at UCB, he was like, I think this is what we were working on, like figuring out the Herald and how it'd be organized and that sort of thing. And so I grew up with anytime there was a movie on TV that Del Close was in, my dad would be like, oh, that's Del. and I'd be like, who cares? Like, it wasn't an area.
He's like, you'll care one day, son.
It was a thing where when I started doing stuff at UCB and there was a Del Close marathon, I was like, Del Close? That's like the guy that my dad points at the TV every now and then says, that's Del.
Yeah, that's that weird dude.
And so they had like more of an understanding of what I was getting it. Like, that's the reason they were encouraging me, was they got it, because to some extent that was the sort of road not taken for my dad, was that he could have kept on doing that. I think one of the things he remembers is that there was the people who were at Second City at that time would come see their shows, and they would go see stuff at Second City. So he remembers like John Belushi coming to their shows and kind of having an attitude like, what's this bullshit? And they would go see stuff at Second City, and they're like, you're not really doing improv. And they would sort of have this like rivalry between like the sort of sub scenes within
and
Chicago.
And when they intersected in the alleyway, they'd be like snapping. Little flute would start playing. I can picture it.
I don't think my dad would have won an alley fight with John Belushi.
No. Yeah, none of us would. So you eventually start classes at UCB. Once you're in there, did you take to it right away? Were you like, this is it?
My first class, it was Improv 101. It was with Betsy Stover. And I knew from the first class that it was not like my experience with acting classes, because right away, I always felt like with acting classes, I had a lot of acting classes where the things that were done felt like there was a current of spite going through. Like, I feel like there were acting teachers who, it's not that they were terrible at teaching acting necessarily, but there were acting teachers who were mad at every new crop of students because they were like, I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
There were some teachers who were like, I want to be an acting teacher. This is what I love. Not talking about them. There were some acting teachers that you really got the feeling that they were in a hell of their own creation, which is, I guess I'll just train other people to live my dream.
Right. In front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll help them get better at it so they can do the thing that I wanted to do. And so some of the acting exercises were things like, there was one acting exercise that we did in a class where everyone, like half the class had like physical and mental breakdowns during this exercise.
Jesus.
And afterwards, we found out that it wasn't really an acting exercise. It had been adapted from a psychological torture exercise that the Viet Cong had apparently done on prisoners of war. And I guess this teacher was like, with a few tweaks, I bet this could be for my students. And with improv classes, it took me a while to figure out. I felt I was learning very specific and practical, tangible things right away. And what I realized at a certain point was that most of the people who were teaching improv already had sort of reached the top level that you can get to as an improviser, which is you're on a house team and you're doing improv shows regularly in front of packed houses that have paid $5 or $10 to see you and are thrilled with the show. And so if you escalated beyond that to film and television, it's sort of in a separate realm.
Yeah.
I never encountered an improv teacher that it felt like this person doesn't get to do improv shows.
Right. And a great amount of the currency that we get paid in is laughter and joy and audience appreciation. Like, even if you're not making money, if you're doing shows even with an indie team or whatever, the creative joy of it is like a payment of its own, that I feel like it becomes like a perpetual motion machine. It's hard to get burned out.
It's also a hard thing to explain to people. And now, there's sort of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, the economy of improv is different.
Yeah.
And pre-pandemic, it felt like there was a lot of talk about like people doing improv shows and not getting paid, and it being like, this is labor that's being like exploited. But there's also the difference between when you're doing a show for money, you have a responsibility to get there at a certain time. Should be early, and you got to fill out paperwork for it, and you have an obligation. You also probably have to charge a little bit more for the tickets, and so you owe a little bit more to the audience. You also lose a big chunk of your audience who can no longer afford to see your shows.
Right. And
including me back in 2008, 2007. I wouldn't have been going to see shows in the current improv economy because I wouldn't have been able to afford it. I just would have been like, I can't. Also, not to judge anyone who spends $20 or more on an improv show, but I do a little bit, because there isn't a thing of like, what are you doing? This is a big gamble. It could be bad.
Yeah. Well, and it takes away some of the freedom and some of the experimentation and big swings that a theater or a team can take, because if you're only programming shows that are like the safe bet for a $25 audience, then it becomes really homogenized. There were shows that I knew that I did in the pre-pandemic era, where if the ticket was $5 or $10, I knew that sometimes that value would get delivered in the first 6 minutes of the show. Yeah. And then you just felt exhilarated. Like, you got your $5 worth. You had that,
and genuinely, like, we were like, even if the next 45 minutes is a train wreck, you remember those first 6 minutes.
You guys got your $5 worth.
And
you're filling in a thermometer on the back wall, like a telethon. You hit $5 and all bets are off.
Yeah. And it is just like there's a part of me that is trying to figure out in this new reality a way to also incorporate that version of it where people can afford to see shows more easily.
Yeah.
And that's a trickier thing now. Because once you're in that realm of where people have shelled out a fair amount of money to see you, you have an obligation to them. It changes the actual content of the show. It changes the energy in the room. Whereas like there were shows that I would go see when I was starting out that I would be like, oh, this is weird. And you can tell they wouldn't have done this if you had paid them more to do it.
Totally.
They would have just been like, oh, it's too big a risk. I don't want everyone mad at me for wasting all their money on this.
Right.
You know?
And I mean, and the shadow side is like early UCB was like so many of those shows were just like a shit show. But free shows that brought in students and people on first dates and all kinds of people, it's just like casting a wide net.
It also changes the vibe because I've found 2025 to be the most unpredictable year in terms of whether or not you have a sold out audience or almost no one at all.
Did you guys find that here? Yeah. Yeah?
From week to week and month to month. It used to be that if it was a little bit of variance based on the weather, you're like, oh, the weather's bad.
Right.
Might not get but I remember once going to a show during, I think it was like Hurricane Sandy, and Shannon O'Neill was doing a show, and so few people showed up for the show that she just invited everyone onto the stage to be part of the show. Including, I was there and Abby Jacobson was there. We were both on stage doing that show. But that was because there was a hurricane.
Right.
Earlier this year, I did a show, and I think it was either like Oscar night or like it was against the Super Bowl or something. But Anthony Atamanuik asked me to do his show, and it was an audience participation-based concept for a show. It required interaction with the audience. And we showed up and there was no one there. And there were like 6 people in the audience. And Atamanuik comes backstage and he was just laughing because he's like, well, this is a new low point. And he came out in character at the beginning of the show and immediately started yelling at the audience members saying, everyone in the audience will be participating in this show tonight. At which point 2 of the 6 people got up and walked out. And it was such a fun show for those remaining 4 people.
Right.
It truly was like,
and honestly, that walkout makes it an even better, more memorable night for everybody.
The walkout was maybe my favorite part of the show because he never stopped yelling at them as they were walking out of the show. He was in character being like, go ahead, leave. Just like, it was brilliant.
I love it. That your journey is interesting because you kind of hit on the continuum of like earnest to jaded. You hit jaded with acting and left.
Yeah.
Took a break and now you re-enter at fully like earnest.
Yeah.
What a great revival story.
First Class, I remember immediately realizing something that there's always like 3 or 4 guys in any Improv 101 class who are the funniest person that anyone they met knows.
Yeah.
And that is, and I say this with some compassion, that like these classes can be hard for those guys because they come in expecting that they're like, I'm Mr. Funny and I brought in my stuff I do.
Yeah.
And then they kind of are trying to slot themselves into a thing that they don't know how to do yet. And I was 33 when I took Improv 101. So I was already older than almost everybody else in the class. It was a generation apart from the people mostly who were taking the classes. And so I was fortunate that I immediately realized I know that I'm funny, and I realized that doesn't matter right now because I don't know how to do this thing. I know how to be funny, but I was also watching other people in the class not be able to do this thing because their first priority was being funny. And
what made you say like, I can't, what was the it that you realized you couldn't do?
I just knew when I was trying to do a scene that I'm like, this isn't like the scenes that I watch when I go see a show on the weekend here at UCB.
Right.
It would be like what I was seeing in an improv show. I didn't understand how it worked. And it would be like if I went to magic shows and then I was just reaching into hats and there's no rabbits.
Yeah.
And I just knew like, well, I'm reaching into the hat and there's no rabbit.
And you're like, ta-da, I made it disappear.
And meanwhile, there's other guys going like, look how funny the hat is on me. And you're like, the point is to get a rabbit out of the hat. And they're like, well, I'm Mr. Hat. And you're just like, those guys are not going to learn how to do this. And I'm like, I will learn how to do this. And I went through the curriculum at UCB faster than it is possible to do now. It was one of those things where it's almost like when you reminisce to a time where it's like before seatbelts or something, where you're like, used to be you could do this.
That we could take 101 and 401 at the same time.
I was doing things like where the end of your class, you couldn't start a new class till your previous class had ended, but your class show, which might be 3 days after your last class, doesn't count as part of the class. So I literally like started 401 before it had my 301 class show. Like I was like, I got through 101 to 401 from May to December. And it was just like, it was all I was focused on. I got every book about, once I realized like I like this and I don't know how to do it, the next 2 years were just focused on like, I got to figure out how, I want to work to figure out how to do this.
2 years is the span that you feel like it took you to figure it out?
Well, from May of 2009 was when I took 101. And I'm pretty sure there are other people at UCB who had a pretty fast rise, but most of them, I think, were people who came from, they'd done it in other cities.
Yeah.
There were people who'd come in and there'd be like Opus Moreski, who was already a writer on the Colbert Report and had done I.O. He was in one of my improv classes and then he was on Herald. He was on my indie team for like 2 weeks before we did a show. And then he got on Herald and I was like, I can't be on the indie team anymore. And his was fast, but he had lot chops and experience and stuff. I think one of the fastest in terms of absolutely not knowing what I was doing it was like May 2009 and 101, and then January of 2011, I was on Herald Night, and then September of 2011, I was on the Stepfathers on the weekend.
But name the date when you got it.
I don't know. I don't know. I can tell you there was a period where I could tell I was doing the movie in an advanced improv class, and so we'd have a show after Herald Night. And there were moments during that where I was like, I think this is what they're doing when I see shows. Like I had a feeling of like, it's going well. I'm not fully sure how, but I know I am doing some things that are working.
Yeah.
I remember there's a moment I remember in a class, two key moments. One was in 101, where I tried to be funny. We were doing like expert interview in like the first or second class. And I did something jokey. And I remember Betsy Stover, she wasn't like cruel or anything, but she kind of sighed and she sort of like.
And started crying. And then she was like, I just have to go get myself
I could just tell from her reaction that she was like, that what I had done was just sort of exhausting, just like someone trying to be.
Which is so much worse.
It was exactly. I was like, oh, that wasn't funny. What I just did was like kind of annoying. It was me like
you being the hat guy,
trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and I remember like I don't want that feeling again. So it was a real hot stove feeling of like it wasn't anything wrong with her reaction. Her reaction was what let me know like what I did didn't work.
Yeah.
Then I remember in 201, I had Gil Ozeri as my teacher. And it was one of those classes where halfway through the class, Gil Ozeri, all of the team Death by Ruru, like left and went to Hollywood. Like all these classes that were being taught by them. So it was like, no, they got a TV pilot they're working on. I was like, oh, okay. There's like some things happening here. But he was my teacher for the first half of the class. And I remember doing a scene where someone was doing a scene where their child had broken a thermometer and drank the mercury out of it. And the parent was calling 911 saying, oh no, my son has just broken the thermometer and swallowed the mercury. What do I do? And I thought, oh, I'll be the paramedic who's showing up. And so I went to like knock on the door thinking like, oh, and then I was like, how do I make it clear that like time has passed? I was trying to figure out how do I make it clear that since he's called, the paramedics are now arriving. And while I was doing that, the guy in the scene said, oh, hold on just a second. Someone's at the door. And I was like, shit, I can't be the paramedics now because I wanted to do something that demonstrated time had passed. Now I'm not in response to the 911 call. I'm someone else, and I don't know who I am. And he's coming to answer the door. I'm like, shit, I don't know what I'm about to be. And he opened the door, and in my mind, I was like, what else is in the scene? What else is happening? And he opens the door, and I said, hello. I'm selling thermometers. And I remember Gil laughed, and I remember thinking, I remember thinking, I didn't plan for it. I almost didn't feel like I even thought of it. All I did was think, like, what's else in the scene? He has a thermometer that's broken. Someone could be selling a thermometer. And as I was saying it, I was like, oh, this is textbook funny because it's solving the problem that is not urgent.
Right. So
that it's
funny.
like, oh, great. Which is funny in the way that life is funny, which is like, great. Now I don't have a broken thermometer. I just have a dead son.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the stories we tell are rife with irony. It's why we tell them. It's why, yeah.
And it was so simple. And I remember Gil laughed, and I was like, yeah, right? Right, Gil? Like, you know it's funny. Like, it was and I was like, I didn't have a feeling like I was ready to be an improviser or anything, but I was like, I think about that moment a lot because I'm like, oh, sometimes it's just right there in front of you that it's like, it didn't require me thinking, like, oh, like, what's really funny? It really just required, like, what's in the scene right now? There's a broken thermometer. There's a kid who's been poisoned on the phone to 911. They're dealing with that. And I'm like, there's only a few things. Is there something to that? And, and like, that.
No, it's so.
The less thought you actually have to do, the more satisfying it sometimes feels. If you could just be like, let's just keep this to like, this is what it is, and not work hard to invent a new thing that is funny and maybe this will surprise you, Which by its nature, it's like the audience can smell you trying to paddle that way, and it like reeks of you thinking that this joke is going to be funny when actually just being in the moment is the funniest thing. Yeah. I want you to lay down some more breadcrumbs like that. Like on the trail of people on their journey learning improv who maybe are just starting out or are where you were when that light bulb moment happened. What were some other like aha moments you had, or even just like tidbits of advice that you could give, or ways that you play that help you when you're in scenes? I mean, there's a couple of things that I always go back to that are just like, oh, there's like things that can always save you. And one is just like, really, really, really pay attention to literally the first thing said or done in a scene. Because when the scene starts going wrong, anything that connects back to that, I always sort of think about like the magical illusion of an improv scene is that we all know that it's, we have a couple things that work. One is that the audience is more terrified than anything that you're going to embarrass them. The audience just wants to feel like you're not embarrassed, and therefore it's embarrassing that they're watching you. So the bar is low as far as like if you do anything that's even kind of good, the audience is like, oh, thank God. Whereas if you do sketch or stand up, the audience, you're telling the audience like, I have prepared something that I think you will think is funny and delightful. Right. And so if it's not, people are like, I'm angry at you. And not that people won't be angry at improvisers because they'll be like, you didn't learn how to do improv. That's what they'll be angry at. But it's so much more forgiving. There's more of a fear of like, oh, are you going to be okay? And the second you do anything even slightly confident, the audience is like, oh, we can relax. They know what they're doing. Yeah. The thing about where a scene starts is the trick of if you think of it like when you edit a film, the reason the scene starts at a certain point is because that's the best place to start that scene. And you start the scene with like, please step into my office, because that's where the scene really starts. And if there's a minute of like, hey, how you doing, small talk, you're like, oh, we probably would just cut that and the scene would start here. So you're creating this like illusion of it, which makes the beginning of the scene even more important. So even if a scene starts poorly and isn't going well, sometimes people try to get away from, oh, the scene's not going well. Let's get away from our humble origins at the beginning of the scene because they think that will save them. Let's find more interesting things over here. But the audience saw the scene start with whatever you began with. Right. So anything that ties back to that automatically has this feeling of like, oh, they really do know what they're doing. This is all, it starts to feel like it has real intent. And it honors your thing in a way that makes it feel, purposeful, intentional. Even if it's like, if you don't like the first couple lines of your scene, if you patternize that and now it becomes a repeated thing, now it's like, oh, the chorus of a song. Like, oh, this really is, you used the best word, intentional. There's like something
about that really sticks the landing. Yeah.
There's and so that's one of the things, and also like just checking in with just remembering that every scene is about the relationship between the characters on stage. So almost always, if you find a point of desperation and you like check in with each other as characters and be like, "You doing okay?" You know, like we're like in bad scenes that are going badly. If the characters are suddenly like, "Let's like ask each other how we feel," that sometimes does the magic trick of, oh, this scene was about, no wonder it was so horrible up to this point. These characters are really going through something, you know?
For part 2 of this episode, go to yesalso.supercast.com. If you like this podcast and you want double the content, head over to yesalso.supercast.com and subscribe. You can also help us out for free by subscribing to us on YouTube and talking us up to your improv communities. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer in one of our Q&A episodes, or a topic that you think would make a great bonus episode, put it in a 5-star review. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A very special thanks to our producer, Ryan Rosenberg, audio and video editor, Brian Kessler, and Britt Faye, who does our marketing. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Suzi. That's not how podcasts work. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.